The man reimagining Disney classics for today's world. Oh, goody, goody, good. We have discovered the name of the criminal, and it is Sean Bailey. Now, this is hardly news in and of itself, but I found this article to be deeply fascinating because it is a very, very defensive article. We've been talking a lot about how the tides seem to be turning as of late, particularly with Pride Month having apparently not inspired, well, damn near any companies to come out with their usual rainbow merchandise. In fact, all of them seem to have not only tucked tails and run, but a fair few have actively surrendered, deleting their rainbow logos and replacing them with the good old-fashioned ones instead. So let's have a look at this, shall we? Because we all know that the whole reimagining things for the modern day world is done for, as I talked about in the Afrocentrism video, for a current year political agenda. It has nothing to do with being inclusive or diverse or anything like this. These are merely tools and weapons used by a political movement. Because, of course, we don't need to reimagine them, for the originals are still good today, and simply remaking them would be the easiest way to earn money for Disney, which actually the article proves to us. So, live-action remakes of films like The Little Mermaid, it's a job that puts him in the middle of a partisan divide. Yes, in between the normal people and the extreme far left. Partisan divide. For more than a decade, Sean Bailey has ruined Disney's animated films. Yeah, I didn't read that incorrectly. With quite efficiency and superhero-sized results. His live-action Aladdin collected $1.1 billion at the box office, whilst a photorealistic, heavy quotation marks, The Lion King took $1.7 billion. A live-action Beauty and the Beast delivered $1.3 billion. So that's pretty goddamn impressive, doesn't it? But let's take one small step back there and actually look at the results via the realities of the times, shall we? So, Aladdin, 2019, with Will Smith. It was a massive production with some of the biggest stars available at the time. I mean, Will Smith himself was a saint still back then, you know, before the whole thing. Not to mention the marketing and the name of Disney and remastering one of their big classics. This was guaranteed to be an enormous hit, and it was before Disney's name truly started getting dragged through the mud like it is today. So budget $183 million and worldwide $1.05 billion. It's quite a lot of money. I mean, that's what, like a 4 times return on investment? That's amazing. What about the original Aladdin then? 1992. So budget $28 million, worldwide $500 million. Okay, well that's hardly anything to sneeze at. It cost a hell of a lot less to produce, and in actual reality, it earned back several more times its total money. But this only tells half the tale, because we've also got to look at the fact that, of course, the dollar was worth a hell of a lot more back then than it is now. In fact, its value is basically cut in half, with $119.92 being worth $182 2019 dollars. So, in reality, we've got to look at this, double the budget, and cut the worldwide profits in half to get a competitive results to Aladdin. So, $200 million budget, $500 million income, circa, giving you a little bit over a 2-to-1 return to investment, which isn't awful, but compared to Aladdin, it is dreadful. Because when people say that these were big hits, they were, in their own way, but compared to the actual predecessor, no. In fact, we wouldn't go so far as to call them flops, sure, but they performed nowhere near as well. So when they try to go like, oh, this is incredible results, not actually, no. Disney likes the cash. The company also views Mr. Bailey's remake operation as crucial to reimagining relevant. Aha. Disney animated classics are treasured by fans, but most showcase ideas from another era, especially when it comes to gender roles, be pretty girls, and things might work out. From another era. For some weird reason, I think being hot and attractive is still a pretty good thing today, mind you, but Details. Considering the feminist movement has spent the last few decades tearing down beauty standards and ideals, in fact, I think it's probably more powerful than ever. The reimaginings, Mr. Bailey refers to as remakes, find ways to make Disney stories less retrograde. It's another way of saying reactive, again, a deliberate communist term for anyone who is opposing their ideology. His heroines are empowered, and his casting emphasizes diversity. So, feminism, a political goal, and diversity, a Marxist goal. Alright. Live-action Snow White, set for release next year, stars the Latina actress Rachel Zegler. Of course it does. As the prince is known as the fairest of them all. I do also love this. Like, people will look at Sam, Gamgee, for example, and go, well, he was once described as having brown fingers. That means he was black, rather than, being a gardener. But the fairest of them all, now we're not talking about color. Now we're talking, she was just really beautiful, you see. There's nothing to do with the skin color. Yara Shahidi played Tinkerbell in the recent Peter Pan and Wendy, making her the first black woman to portray the character on screen. The level of granularity we have reached at this point is the stuff of parody. Like, to begin with, we're like, oh, this is the first black character in a Disney movie. Like, okay, that's something, sure. Like, the one with the voodoo people, the first, all black fairy tale sort of stuff. That one, I don't remember his name. Only thing I remember about that movie is the song I've Got Friends on the Other Side, which was pretty damn good. But then they were like, oh, okay, we've done that, so we can't really use that anymore. The first black female character, yay! Shit, now I used that. The first black female gay character. And now we've arrived at, she's the first black woman to play this particular character. Holy shit. What's going to be next? This will be the first black transgender Tinkerbell? What then? The first black transgender but gay Tinkerbell? We want to reflect the world as it exists, Mr. Bailey said. Well, that's the interesting thing though. Let's think about that for a second. Let's return to Aladdin, shall we? Aladdin wasn't actually half bad, because it was fairly faithful to the actual story. Now, why is that, I wonder? Or could it be because the characters were already of the correct skin color? There was no need to race swap all that many of the characters here. Well, you need to race swap. Close enough. Race swap the genie, of course. You did do that, but he's blue, so who cares? All of the other characters were already Arabian, so Disney could actually for once focus on making a story that, actually adapted the original, rather than made up its own complete nonsense. And they were rewarded, at least decently, at the box office for this. So, it has nothing to do reflecting the real world, because of course the Middle East today is a far more diverse place. Places like Dubai and Saudi Arabia are overflowing with us disgusting evil whiteys, having come no doubt to steal their natural resources, I'm sure. But there was no race swapping there. Weird. But that worldview and business strategy has increasingly put Disney and Mr. Bailey, a low-profile, self-effacing executive, in the middle of a very loud, very unpolite cultural fight. Oh, now we're talking about being polite, are we? Fuck you very much, sir. For every person who applauds Disney, there seems to be a counterpart who complains about being forced wokeness. Well, actually, as we're going to be seeing in quite a bit, it's not a quite one-to-one here. Many complaints are finding themselves in this vice. Many companies, Target, Anheuser-Busch, Nike, Disney, which has a powerful impact on children, and there we come to it, as their forming life beliefs has been uniquely challenged. In this hyper-partisan moment, both sides of the political divide have been pounding on Disney to stand with them, with movies that come from Mr. Bailey's corner of the Magic Kingdom as a prime example. Well, Disney has already been standing with the left, but the problem is you can never actually stand with the bleeding edge of the left because it is forever moving. The recent Little Mermaid movie, for example, was criticized for not commenting on slavery and colonialism enough for the progressives' liking, because you can never be left enough, because being yet further left, or whatever left currently exists, is literally how they garner political capital. Consider his remake of The Little Mermaid, which arrived in theaters 2 weekends ago and cost an estimated $375 million to make and market. The new version scuttles problematic lyrics from 1989 original "It's she who holds her tongue who gets a man." That was literally the villain song, I believe, about stealing her voice, but details. In the biggest change, Hale Bailey, who is black, plays Ariel the mermaid. Disney has long depicted the character as white, including at its theme parks. Depicted the character as white. Depicted the Danish mermaid as white. Depicted. You're using the incorrect word here. Always has been white, and only now has been changed for reasons of political expedience to be black. So, The Little Mermaid. Let's see. Domestic opening, $100 million. Worldwide, 338. And it's been out now for the period of time where these numbers should have been hitting, the actual strident mark, where it's supposed to have been earning back a lot more than it cost. In all due likelihood, The Little Mermaid is heading towards not only not a profit, but a straight-up loss. In large part because of the Little Black Mermaid, who 1. could barely act in the movie, and 2. turned virtually the entire world against the movie because we all know what this means now. This isn't merely the purview of us people on the internet who've been watching over this for a decade or so. The normies, the people who have no idea about the wider political ramifications or the ideologies of Marxism or Afrocentrism or any of like this, they see yet another race swap and they go, I saw another one of those a while ago and it was shit. In all due likelihood, this one's going to be as well, because I see a little bit of a connecting red line here. Support from Mr. Bailey, notably from people of colour and film critics, so notably from the... There you go. I'll mark that for something. Notably from the people who stand to benefit financially by, thinking that they can be cast, and film critics who also stand to benefit politically, being a near universally far left-wing class, have been offset by a torrent of racist commentary. It's like, oh, you poor film critics and people are and then there's the racist on the internet. Just out of interest, New York, would you consider the entirety of the nation of China to be racist, perchance? Because the Chinese government have come out and specifically denounced this film. It isn't just white people going like, oh, them darn blackies taking over our TV shows and movies. No, no one likes this. Not even the communist nation likes this. It is a deeply unpopular thing for you to do. And others, there we go, have blasted Little Mermaid for failing to acknowledge the horrors of slavery in the Caribbean. A few LGBTQ people have criticized Disney for hiring a straight male makeup artist for the villainous Ursula, who looks in the animated film was inspired by a drag queen. And so we return to the previous point, you can never be left enough. Disney has long regarded these kinds of social media storms as tempests in a teapot. Trending today, replaced by a new complaint tomorrow. In 2017, for instance, a theater in Alabama refused to play the live-action Beauty and the Beast. This is because it contained a 3-second glimpse of two men dancing in each other's arms. It became a global news story. Ultimately, the fracas seemed to have no impact on ticket sales. Yes, because it takes a long time for culture to shift. But this one, The Little Mermaid would generate as much as $1 billion worldwide, and again, it's sitting at nothing. And a further mention as well. For example, what if we went to Amazon and we googled Aladdin merchandise? Look at that. It's, I think almost actually entirely from the old animated movie, with nothing whatsoever from the new one at all. Yep. Yep. And this, of course, another big thing, merchandise and marketing sales. The original is still very clearly merchandisable. Oh, no, there we go. There's one from the movie, I think. Yeah, there we go. We've got one. This is a huge part of the long-term profits of any modern-day entertainment entity. You want to be selling toys, you want to be selling apparels, you want to be selling t-shirts, you want to be selling rides at Disney World, you want to be selling attractions, etc., etc. And the new ones simply don't. meaning that we don't even need to just look at the box office, we need to look at the merchandising sales as well. In this case, the Little Black Mermaid has fallen so far short of its expectations that it'd be like trying to reach the moon in a larder. Adam Menken just told me that he thinks this is one better than animated films. Robert A. Iger, Disney chief executive, said at the film's premiere last month, referring to the Oscar-winning composer. It's like, oh, a friend I have thinks this looks pretty good. Well, good for you. Instead, Little Mermaid will top out close to 600. That's optimistic. Box office analysts said on Sunday, largely because the film faltered overseas, where it was review-bombed, quote-unquote, with online trolls flooding movie sites. Again, literally the government of foreign nations have denounced your game. Okay, movie. This isn't simply a few dozen white people that you don't like sitting in basements around the world, creating 100 alt accounts to review bomb it on Metacritic. This is an actual general cultural shift, where your politicized nonsense is no longer popular. Mr. Bailey declined to comment on the racist response to the film. And this is rather interesting, isn't it? Back in the day, this would be used as a marketing tool. In fact, Disney did use this as a marketing tool very recently with the so-called Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show, where they even told the actress that was playing Reva that she was going to receive all kinds of racist criticism and that she needed to come to Disney with it immediately so that they could use it for their marketing scheme. And yet now, I don't want to comment on the racist comments. No, that would be... Wait, hold on. The racist comments are the overwhelming majority of the feedback we're receiving. Misa thinks the next one is going to be a movie about, what do we do? The Beauty and the Beast, but this time the Beast gets shot, and the hero is the white guy who's wearing a Confederate flag. Or something to that effect, anyways. So, Mr. Bailey has been presented at Walt Disney Studios. Basically, the takeaway is quite simple here. Diversity is not very popular in the slightest. They go on to try and make the point for diversity further down, but it simply isn't selling anymore. And it is blatantly obvious to the point where Disney themselves are beginning to realize this. Disney has begun to understand that they are on the losing side of this political divide as they receive yet further pushback from Florida and Ron DeSantis, whose success at this point appears to be directly correlated to how badly he can screw Disney in the bumhole. Like, it turned from being one of the most beloved of American institutions to being one of the most loathed universally, because they hitched their cart to a political franchise of a party who literally can never be pleased by anything they do at any point in time, and in opposition to the people who have been supporting them for all of this time. Disney is screwed, and articles like this is literally just the desperate rearguard action now of the far left movement in this regard, as they need to constantly go, oh, it's just a few racists, it's just a few trolls, it's just a few of them. It's like, what? But like a nation, like Egypt is suing Netflix for a race swap now. China has told you to stop with this nonsense. And the majority of reviews are negative. Are you telling me, perhaps, Mr. Brooks Barnes, that the majority of people today are racists? Because, by your definition, I have a sneaking suspicion that you might just be right, sir. And that's a very dark future on the horizon for you and your ilk, isn't it? And for Disney as well. Though we will have to wait and see whether Disney begins to pivot, because of course recently, during the earnings call, they announced that they would be removing a lot of content that wasn't necessarily driving subscriber growth, and then they yeeted 90% woke programming. Huh. How very suspicious. How very much like even a billion-dollar company can eventually learn. Because here's the thing. No matter how wealthy a company is, they can always be wealthier. You do not arrive at a point where money is no longer important for a company. It has simply been the fact that up until this point, very recently, last 1 or 2 years, it was more profitable to get ESG and investor money by virtue signaling than it was to actually please the consumer. And in the case of a few years ago as well, again, this is a relatively recent full-on turnaround because the right wing hasn't been able to organize effective boycotts because they haven't had the majority on their side, or at the very least, the majority haven't been annoyed enough to the point where they were willing to actively inconvenience themselves. But with, as the article mentioned, Bud Light and Target, we have now arrived at that point. So whilst previously they could still earn a buck, albeit significantly less than if they had simply continued doing the thing they were doing, now they are looking at straight up losses in terms of production value and income, and obviously they are being slaughtered in the merchandising sphere. Even Disney can only sustain this for so long before the incredible costs of making modern-day entertainment, television, movies, of running enormous theme parks with hundreds if not thousands of employees begin to crush them. Because again, even if a company has $100 billion, that really doesn't matter if their operating costs are also in the tens or 20s of billions. Happy day. Until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching yet again, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.